Hey guys, welcome back for another exciting video. I want to show you today a little bit more about the command line interface on the Power Platform. And so previously I made a video talking specifically about this. So I would encourage you to go watch the other video. I'll put a link in the description box below to it so that you'll have access to it, as well as access to this page as well. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about the command line interface and let's talk about solutions, because that's what we're talking about here. And let's look at my environment. So I have two environments. One's Lab 001 and another environment called Udemy, which is the environment that I use for recording my Udemy courses. So today I'm going to take a solution that I built in Lab 001. We're going to use the command line interface to export the solution. And then what we're going to do is we're going to import it into the Udemy solution to shore up with. Now, before you get too lost in all of this, I realize some of you don't know what solutions are and all of the caveats, so stick around towards the end of this video, because for those of you that already know solutions, you kind of just want to know what's going on with what the video says it's supposed to be about. And I don't want you guys to have to suffer through stuff you already know about. But if you're new and don't even know much about solutions, you don't know much about environment variables, you don't know much about Canvas apps and flows and how to use the environment variables, stick around again towards the end, because I'm going to show you guys all of that. So what I do need to do is switch over to Lab 001, which I'm already in, and I want to go into solutions and I want to show you the test solution. So two key parts of this screen. First of all, this is my display name. Okay, this is test solution. And then I actually have a programmatic accessible name. This is the actual name that we're going to use in our command line interface, because this is the name that it's going to need to do what it needs to do. All right, and then if I look inside of the solution, you'll see I have three objects. I've got a Canvas app under the type column, you can see. So I got one Canvas app, I've got one Cloudflow, and I've got an environment variable. Okay, and it's important when you're going from environment to environment. You may have environment specific settings that you'll need to track, and so this is the best way of doing it. Again, hang out towards the end. We'll go into this because the Cloudflow leverages this as well as the Canvas app, and they're very different on how you use them and consume them in each of the apps as versus the flow. So let's just get to the meat and the potatoes here, and let's look at some stuff as far as how to access all of this. All right, so here we are, and I've got a bunch of code, garbly-gook on screen. I'm going to walk you through each of these. We're going to do it, and then on my desktop, I have a folder called Pack for the Power Platform CLI. And so as a result of that, all of the stuff that we're going to do is going to go into this folder. Now I'll paste all of this information minus my URLs in the description box below so that you can copy and paste this, and you can see how you might take this to the next level essentially. Okay, so let's talk about some first steps, second steps, and third steps. Okay, so let's put some lines here because each of these are going to be like steps. Okay, so first we got step one, right? I probably should have done this on the onset for you. No, this is like watching paint dry. Sorry, guys. All right, so for crying out loud. All right, so going back to step one. The first thing that we need to do is to create some authentication. So let's show you the Pack tool, PAC. I showed you this before in the other video, but I do want to show it to you at the high level. So if I type in Pack after I've got the command line interface installed, if we look, here's all of the usage. These are the different things. We can do administrative stuff with it. Today we're going to deal with the auth. Then what we're going to deal with is the solutions, okay? So I'm using two of the components for this. The other day I showed you how to use, I believe it was under the Canvas app. So in all, through all of the videos, I've used the auth, we've used the Canvas, and we've used the solution. So maybe we'll do some more videos kind of going through this CLI tool a little bit further. But again, today what we're going to do is use the auth. So now that you've seen that, let's clear that out, CLS, and now let's do Pack, and let's do auth. Now we're going to get some help specific things. So what can we do with the authentication stuff, right? So here we can create authentications, we can list the existing authentications. We can select them, we can delete them, we can basically name or rename them, and of course we can clear everything that's stored in our profile on the machine. So because you're going to be doing this for the first time, you're going to need to set them up. And so that's what this is in step one. We're going to need to create these, okay? And so you're going to need to just swap out like lab 001 with whatever you've named your environment, and if you haven't named it, then you're going to need to use that name. Now you may be thinking, okay Dave, where are those names? So here we go. I'm in an environment, lab 001. I'm going to click on the cog, and you got to get this from the admin center. If you're not familiar or you're not sure, just follow these steps and this is how you'll get to it, okay? As soon as this pulls up, so here we got lab 001. If you click into it, the environment URL is here. And all you have to do is right click and choose copy link address. And then when you get into, on the clipboard, it gives you that full name, which is what you see that I'm using here. All right, so that's how you get to it. Let's close this down. So you're going to go ahead and create two of these because, again, you need to export from one, import into another. And, you need to add this essentially for every environment that you want to work with. And so I already have these two there, but this is a good opportunity to show you the list. So if I type in pack auth list, you can see what you have in your local cache. And so I have a couple things very interesting to note. I have profiles in brackets, which is like an array. This is index 1, and then it's called index 2, by the way. You'll reference to it, and you'll see right here where it says index 1. So that's why I'm using index 1. This is why I have index 2. Those numbers signify the index. So that's what these are in the later steps so that you'll understand what those are. And then the name. Okay, so I have to give it a name, which is lab 001. Name is over here. Well, that's the name of the package. But anyway, over here, name is Udemy. And so here you'll see the lab 001. And here you'll see the not the public name, but Udemy, sorry. And this is when you're creating it, which is what you're going to run, you provide the name, okay? But you don't provide an index because it will provide the next available index for you. So you're going to run these with your URLs, and then when you run list, you should have something similar to what you see on screen. You should have two indexes, 1 and 2, with the 2 that you just created because you're using this for the first time. So I'm going to clear this out. So you've done that, so let's forget about that. Now we're moving along into step 2. So now what do I need to do? I have to select the environment authentication. So by doing select index 1 name lab 001, I'm going to run these one at a time. It will now select that. So now I am working within that environment. Any commands that I run subsequent on Solution, on Canvas, on whatever, it's going to be in scope to that because that's the authentication for the environment that I'm currently using. So very, very important that you guys know where you are before you start running commands. It's no different than working in the UI where you may have seen videos where I was doing something and I forgot that I had not switched this. So clicking and switching and choosing here is the same task as selecting the environment variable authentication here in code or in command line. So now on this source environment variable, what I want to do is I want to work with the solution. So remember earlier I showed you a bunch of extra stuff. So we type in pack, and then these are all of the items. So we're going to be working within the solution commands. So if I CLS again, and I just type in pack, solution, these are all of the options that we can do for solutions. Now we can initialize with a new data verse, whatever. I'm going to let you go and read through this. The documentation that I showed you earlier has all of this information in there as well. So the things that we're going to use here today is export and unpack. Now unpack is something optional. You don't have to do this. This is something that you will do if you're using source control or you just want to have a local copy of it in its unpacked state, essentially, okay? Because you can't really get to it. It's not a real zip file that you get to. Well, it is a real zip file, but the point is you can use the unpacked solution to get it, which will unpack it in a solution type of very specific way. Anyway, so now that we've already been, we've chosen our environment, now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and run an export. So basically this is going to pull down a zip file, and it's going to pull it down into the path. So this period backslash essentially is saying this this directory that I'm in, and the directory that I'm in is on the desktop and in the pack folder. Okay, so be very careful on what you choose for the path, because it'll get stuffed into whatever you've listed here, obviously. So let me go ahead and run this. Now that I've authenticated, it's going out. It's going to look at the solution. It's starting to export the solution, and it's downloading the solution into the path. All right, it succeeded. So here we go. We got the solution. So let's just extract files here to this folder called Test Solution. Let's see what we've got inside. So here's all of the information inside of the solution and all of the app URI and app stuff, right? So that's all looking pretty straightforward. Now let's run this Unpack, and let's see what it does. Now I'm putting it into a folder called Unpack, and I'm specifying the source solution. So here it's unpacked as well. So let's go into the Canvas app, and we've got pretty much the same suspect. So this command line is optional. Again, you don't have to use it, but if you want to use it with source control and have it all automated and not have to use the GUI, or you can just use whatever zip tool that you have and unpack it with those commands, and you don't have to use the CLI. But it is an option here as well. So in any event, I'm going to go ahead and delete this other solution because the rest of the code depends on this unpacked folder. So now what we want to do is now we need to switch over to the Udemy environment. Okay, now I don't have a solution called Test Solution. Okay, so here we are, Test Solution in Solutions, and under the lab environment I have it. Now let's switch over to Udemy. Let's go to Solutions, and I don't have a test solution over here. But after running this command, I will or should have this. So let me copy this out. CLS. Let's go ahead and paste that in. Now we're connecting to the Udemy environment, and so that's there. And now what I'm saying is I want to import the zip file into that solution. So here I am, I'm running it. It's sending it and connecting it and doing what it needs to do. And the solution's importing, and when it's actually imported, we will see that show up in the environment, and it won't get that waiting. If you do it through the graphical user interface, what will happen is it'll show you it's pending. But in the command line interface, it actually waits till it's really there. So now if we go ahead and hit F5 on the screen to refresh, we should actually see our solution in the stack, and we do. And so if we go into the solutions, now you will see that all of the information is here. Now, because I'm in the second solution, now I have the opportunity to override a environment-specific value for this. Otherwise, the default value will take in effect and/or a hold. But let me show you this caveat with this current value versus the other one. So I'm going to leave the current value blank to illustrate this. So that is how you use the CLI. If you guys came to see here how to use that, how to move solutions from environment A to environment B, you could jump off the video. We're done here. I don't have anything else to show you. But now I want to talk about the nuances of solutions and some of the things with environment variables, which is kind of a little bit bonus or out of scope to the original topic of the video. But for those of you that don't know much about solutioning, I want to get into some of the more nuanced details for you guys. All right, so thank you if you've decided to choose to stay around and to see the second part, essentially, of this video. So I told you that environment variables work very differently from Canvas apps all the way over into the cloud flows, essentially. So let's talk about high-level solution, what a solution is. So a solution is nothing more than a bucket or a container, okay? So here we have the test solution, and inside of it is the objects that you've seen. Now, how do you get to solutions? So here I am, I'm in my Udemy environment, and to get to solutions, I simply click on solutions. To create a new solution, you come to solution, and essentially all you do is give it a display name, and when I type the display name, it'll concatenate and jam together a programmatic name for you. So basically the pretty name and then the actual object name and the data. And then of course you pick a publisher. And so I have DEF CON Labs as a publisher that's decided. You may want to choose a new publisher and create your own. And then what's nice about creating your own publisher is that things get prefixed from the objects that have names, and so you can put something very specific in here. It's very helpful programmatically later if you want to try to manipulate those objects. So having a good custom prefix is very helpful to distinguish yourselves from what's baked in by default. So I always highly suggest using a custom or your own publisher for this because of the prefix portion benefit that you get in and of itself. So again, going back to solutions, there's other benefits to putting things together in a solution, and so you're going to start seeing some of this all come together. So let's go look at my Cloudflow, and I want to show you how to access that environment variable. And the other thing is that unless the Cloudflow is inside of a solution, you're not going to get this. So let me show you a simple compose object, and here I'm grabbing the environment variable 1. Now you might be thinking, oh boy, how did you get to that? Is that some funky expression you had to write? Not at all. It's just simply there. I simply choose var m1 from the list of dynamic content, and that's the key. It's not a connector, it's dynamic content. It's baked right into the flow at the root level. But there's a caveat why that works like that. And that's because the solution has this Cloudflow. I didn't just go create a Cloudflow. I didn't go to flow.powerapps.com. I'm in the make.powerapps.com experience, and I'm editing a flow that's inside of a solution. And when you do that, you have access to the environment variables. Because if I just go to flow.powerapps.com, I will never see this category. So if you're banging your heads against the wall, or you've tried this and you never could get this to work, that's why. It has to be in a solution to have this accessible. So I hope that kind of solves a mystery for some of you guys out there and gals. And so what I want to also show you is how extremely painful by comparison it is to do the same thing inside of a Canvas app. Because I would think that they would try to make this as easy as possible, but they don't. And so Microsoft, if you're listening, it would be really helpful if you guys simply provided an object much like you do for app dot or user dot. These are baked in functions that you have inside of Canvas apps. So if I do, I don't know why I clicked on that. If I click on insert and label, and then inside the label, let's just say I wanted to do app dot, and I could get the screen name, right? Active screen. And so it'll put screen.1 when I choose the name, right? So this is a function that's built into Power Apps because of the app function. I could also change this to user. So user, and close that up, and then dot, and full name, right? Dot. Okay, full name. There we go. So now I have my username. Well, you know what would be really nice if you guys did? Use environment. Just env or environment or whatever dot, and then we don't have to go through this rigmarole of, and here's how you get it to work in Canvas apps. So let me delete this box. So before you start doing anything, the first thing you need to do is come down and you need to add 2 tables from Dataverse. And in order to add these 2 tables in Dataverse, you simply need to know which 2 tables they are. Now this is environment variable values and environment variable definition. And just the way that this thing is set up is kludgy, okay? So let me bail on this to go to another, I guess we'll keep this here. Let's just click back. Back to solution. Let's go over into data and table. So I'm in now the environment, and I'm in data, and I'm in tables. And so I'm going to click all to make sure I have access to all the tables. I'm going to type in env to get to the 2 environment tables. Now you may be like, what the heck is this? What is this going on? So these are 2 tables that's part of every environment. It's baked into the solution. You don't create them. Even if you don't have a license for Dataverse, you should at least have access to these because this is kind of the core underlying factor. So even if you have the free non-licensed version, which is the premium, allows for premium connectors and stuff, you do have some Dataverse access to some level, just because Microsoft uses Dataverse to essentially run your environment, okay? And so if you're really curious about what all is in Dataverse, even if you're not licensed for it, just know that a lot of stuff pertaining to your environment, they store it in the database. So these are all the system tables, essentially. And of course, I do have some custom tables that are for me that I created, but if you're not licensed, you won't have any access to do anything like this, okay? So just know that all I'm trying to show you here is the env for the environment variables. And now let's talk about the two tables and what they are. When I create an environment variable and I give it a name, the name is stored in the definition. Okay, so if I click into this table, I click on data, here is my environment variable that I created. But notice it has def lab in front of it. So the def lab is that prefix I was showing you about creating a custom publisher. If I just chose the default from, whatever it is and just left it, it would be like CR something or other, right? So that's why I highly encourage you to do publishers, because you'll always be able to know and you'll always be able to filter on the list. Now see how this says MSDYN? That's a Microsoft Dynamics prefix, okay? So we kind of know that that's a system table or a system object or a system row, because I never really did anything with that, or actually, this is something that I did, but the prefix, because I used a publisher that had that in there, that's what that was. So it was a baked-in or built-in publisher for that one. So in any event, the environment variable definition has the name of the variable. Now, the environment variable value table holds the value that you have, but more importantly, the value that it holds is a very specific value. So let's do env. And I want to go into the value. I want to go into data. All right, so look at this. Value. This is my current string value. If I can open up a new tab from here, I want to come over here to the solution. And I want to dig into my solution. And I want to specifically dig deeper into my one environment variable. All right, look at this. The default value. This is my string value from the environment. Now look at the current value. This is my current string value from the environment. Now if I go back over to the table inside of the Dataverse, over here, this is the value. This is my current string value. So what am I trying to show you, or what am I trying to tell you? What I'm trying to tell you is this. If you try to use environment variables inside of an environment, and you're using it or consuming it or need to use it from inside of a Canvas app, you always need to provide the current value, because you're never going to be able to get to the default value. It's not accessible in this way. I haven't figured out how to get to it in any other way, because everything that I've ever researched from the beginning of time all shows the way that you access an environment variable is like this. So you provide these two tables as a connector. So you have to add them to your Canvas app, okay? So these are the two connectors that's required. Again, it's a Dataverse connector connecting to these two system tables. And then what you need to do is you need to look up from the values table, and then you've got a filter on that, essentially, the second table, which is the definition, specifically the column name, display name. And then the display name needs to equal the variable name that you gave it. And then what I'm doing is, after all of that, I need to put the dot value, because I'm pulling back the dot value from the values table, which actually gives me the value of what I assigned to it. And it's not just the default value. Again, it's the current value for that environment, which is now why when I'm inside of it, you will see that it is blank. And the reason it's blank is because if I pop back over here to, am I in the right? Let's see here, remove this value. Let me put this back in here, save, go back to my Canvas app. Let me back this out so it goes essentially and tries to requery. Now it should come in. Give it a second. It does take like a second or two to populate it in. Oh, I'm in. Well, guys, look at this. I'm in the Udemy variable. See how easy it is to get spun around? So I need to get out of this. I need to go over into my solution, test solution, Canvas app. Where's my Canvas app? My test app. definitely make sure you're in the right environment when you're doing your work. So that is one of the caveats to environments. Make sure you're in the right place. Okay, so it is working now. All right, so environment variable value. So to show you this, that it actually works so that you believe what I'm trying to tell you, you go into the environment variable 1. Let's remove this. We'll just put 111. Actually, no, we're not going to put anything. We're just going to leave it blank. Save. Okay, that's updated. Correct environment. Let me remove the value and put it in again so that it grabs it. And then when it goes out and grabs and does the query, it'll come back in like a half a second or two with a blank value, okay? Because that default value hasn't been provided, because now that this table, environment variables value, doesn't have an entry for it, because the default value for the variable doesn't exist. And then, of course, if I go back into the variable and change it back to having a current value, and then go back into my Power App, do dot value as expected, you'll see it in about a half a second. Ba-bang! It will then bring in the current value. So these environment variables are so stupid easy inside of Cloud Flows or Power Automate. They're very difficult by comparison to use because of having to add 2 connectors to 2 different tables and to do some more essentially advanced style type of lookup. I mean, if you've been doing Canvas apps for a while, it's pretty straightforward. But if you're new to Power Automate, you're new to the Power Platform, and you're new to writing formulas in the FX language, you know, this is really advanced. It's hard to use to get started. And environment variables and solutioning is absolutely paramount if you're in an environment for a large enterprise, even a medium-sized enterprise. So these are the best practices, guys, you should be using, but they make it a little bit harder. Okay, so check the description box below. I'll try to jam up as much information as I can for everything that I showed here, but I want to show you the caveat, the nuances, how to use the command line interface, and of course using the pack, the unpack, and of course then you can integrate this with Git, use version control on your solutions and things of that nature. So anyway, this is kind of a little bit longer video than I expected, but hope you got a lot of value from it. That's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.